Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurtzbacher. Today, we're going to talk about what happens when you listen to the voice that calls to adventure, cross the threshold, and take that trip of a lifetime, only to encounter a major change in plans and resetting of expectations. In this episode, I get to talk from direct experience, and I have with me today as our guest, my darling, my wife, and this podcast's most committed listener, Maria Wurtzbacher. So this podcast is all about listening to that voice inside that calls us to adventure and what happens when we follow that call. It was inspired by so many of our own personal adventures, and Maria and I have had many. Last summer, we leveled up our adventuring by taking a month-long trip to northern Minnesota, including several nights in the wilderness of the Boundary Waters canoe area. And you can hear all about that episode 17. Episode 17. It was sitting on the bank of our campsite in the Boundary Waters, watching the sunset over the conifers on the other side of the lake, where I felt a deep peace and I realized I was in my happy place. And I wanted to share that experience with others in hopes of helping them listen to their own call to adventure so they could find their happy place and that sense of inner peace. So now here we are. We're only a few weeks away from celebrating 1 year of the Inspire Campfire podcast. And our guests' stories of their adventures have most definitely inspired listeners to follow their own calls to adventure. Maria and I are no exception. We've been incredibly inspired by all the stories, and it's helped us to continue to follow our own dreams. So just a few weeks ago, we actually returned from another summer family adventure where we explored much of the state of California. We had big plans to see a wide variety of people and places, but our plans got turned upside down while we were on the road by the now infamous COVID-19. So Maria and I want to share our experience with you all and some of the many lessons that came out of it for us. So with that, Maria, darling, welcome to the campfire.
Excited to be here. Do I get to have a s'more at the end of the show?
Yeah, you definitely do. And that's going to be super fun. So sad fact that we have to acknowledge, Maria and I are recording this podcast in the same house, in separate rooms, through a video live stream, because that's the way the podcast technology is set up these days. So kind of funny how the podcast technology drives the interaction. We could be sitting next to each other, but I promise we will when we get done talking here. But I want to start with just kind of an overview of our so-called plan for the trip that we were going to take this summer with our kids.
Yeah, so I'll jump in there. We had planned to go to Southern California, as you mentioned, and to explore the beaches along the way and meet with a lot of friends, some that we actually had only met online before that, which is pretty amazing. And we were making our way to San Diego for a conference, hear some amazing speakers, learn a lot of great family content, personal growth, get the kids involved, all that good stuff, and then hit the road and head out to hit some national parks. So we wanted to go to Yosemite, which actually we had tried to go to Yosemite. We may talk about that in a little bit in 2020, and it got canceled because of COVID. So
Right.
We were trying again. So that was a huge inspiration for why we were heading that way. But we were going to go to Yosemite and then Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Park. So a lot of people focus up front, and then some nature, reflection, adventure with just the family on the back end.
Yeah. So it's just funny because like the plan really was, we kind of had this master plan of sort of lumping a lot of things into one experience that we wanted to get the kids involved with. We wanted to hit, like you said, national parks. It's a big goal of ours. And just to kind of elaborate on what you said, so Yosemite is someplace that we'd never been before. And just actually one of our podcast guests had said to us that it was one of his favorite places. Andrew Underwood said that was one of his favorite places on the planet was Yosemite. And so I've wanted to get there for a very long time. We got up, getting reservations for Yosemite is not easy. They sell out. I mean, almost instantly. You have to get up on a certain day at a certain time, and you have to get in front of your computer. And when they open the reservations for the campgrounds, I mean, they're sold out within like 2 or 3 minutes. And so in 2020, we were online. We got everything booked. We got a perfect campsite. We did all the work. And then, I mean, that was March, I think, when we booked the reservation. And of course, like 2 or 3 weeks later, COVID hits. The whole park shut down for that whole summer. So COVID stopped us from going to Yosemite in 2020. And this was our chance to revisit here in 2021 or 2022. So like to your point, we had kind of 2 different phases of this trip. The first trip was really people focused. And I mean, that part, like just to elaborate again, was so awesome because we got to see these people that we had never met before. Many of them were stars of this podcast, guests of this podcast. So we spent some time with Terry Adamson, episode 12. We spent time with Donna Bond, episode 41. Lauren Donahue, who's episode 18. Mike Gandolfo, number 42. Carl Miller, number 3. And Michelle Mills, number 39. And we even got to connect with a bunch of people that you will be seeing and hearing from on this podcast going forward in the future. So it was really just fulfilling to see some of these people face to face that we'd never actually seen other than on like a Zoom kind of live stream thing.
Kind of like a Inspire Campfire tour when you think about it.
It totally was. It was so much fun. I just seeing everybody. And one thing, like, and this is a fact, like everybody looked better in person. That was just such a fun thing to be able to acknowledge. I really enjoyed that. But so the second part of the trip was supposed to be like, okay, we had the first half was very people focused. And the second half was sort of supposed to be reflection and getting back to nature and going to these parks. And dare I say, isolation from other people so that we could reflect. And we actually got exactly what we asked for. We just didn't get it the way that we asked for it. So
how life often works.
What happened?
So shortly after we're having this time of our lives, I wake up one morning and I realize, oh, wow, I do not feel well. I'm tired. I'm weak. I'm sore. I don't know what's going to happen today. And we were headed toward Kings Canyon. And so at first I thought, okay, be a trooper, Maria. And I have this pattern in my life where I tend to just go, go, go. And then before I realize it, I've gone too far and I just get sick. So I figured this was my usual pattern. Okay, no problem. I just need to rest tonight. Let's get to the Kings Canyon National Park and it all will work out. And we did go to the park and it was amazing. We got to see the giant sequoia trees and I got to hug a few of them. And that was one of my main missions on this trip. So I feel like that was a major success. But as the day wore on, it wasn't very good. And I realized probably toward dinner time, wow, I need to get to a bed and fast. And I don't know how long this is going to last, but I'm going down. Which was really unfortunate because we had so much in front of us and that set off for a fever and then 2.5 days of what we learned later was COVID-19, but of course didn't realize at the time. So that's what happened.
We haven't really even talked about it that much. Like when you first started feeling sick and like that first day, like were thoughts of COVID going through your mind?
Absolutely not. And I feel like that's, like I said, that's my pattern. So I feel like when it first hit, I thought, okay, as long as I just sleep this off, I'm going to be fine and just gain my strength tomorrow, take some emergency, everything will be good to go. And it just didn't go that way at all. So I was surprised. And, obviously that changed the entire trajectory of the trip.
So it's kind of interesting because like reflecting back on the Boundary Waters trip the year before, like we were gone for a month. And like you had said, I mean, the first part of this California trip was like flawless. Everything was perfect. And that's how I feel like the entire Minnesota trip was. And like, even to the extent that like when we were in Minnesota, I remember like saying to you, like, I literally feel like there's a bubble around us. Like everything is just going so well. Like we were in the wilderness, like, and even like there was at one point a thunderstorm in the Boundary Waters, and we were at our campsite, both having like some fear because we're in the middle of nowhere and there's a thunder and lightning storm coming through. And the thing literally like split and went on both sides of us and literally like
Yes.
parted and went around us.
I remember
And like,
that.
I think that was the same night that we were sitting on the bank, like looking at the sunset. And like, I think the storm had passed, the sun set, and that's when it was just like this deep sense of peace. But like, I'm like, there's a bubble around us. And I just felt that. And I remember like paddling. So we had canoed into that campsite. I remember paddling out of the Boundary Waters and thinking to myself, like, wow, we've got this bubble around us, but what if? And like at that time, like my two biggest fears being in the wilderness were like thunderstorm and what if somebody gets hurt or sick and we're in the middle of nowhere. So like we came out of that trip, and like one of the first things that I did when I got back home was I actually registered and signed up for a wilderness first responder course through Knowles, National Outdoor Leadership School, and went and did this 9-day wilderness first responder class. And it was amazing. It's like totally prepared me and got me ready for, things that might come up. So like we have, and then I don't know, maybe I was like manifesting or something. I didn't really get to use my wilderness first responder skills like when COVID hit, but at least it was like, I don't know, I feel like it kind of had me like mentally prepared to like take action. But
You were prepared.
yeah. So you didn't know, you thought this was just like I'm worn down and I just need to rest. But how like what were your symptoms? How did it feel? What went down? Like, everybody gets COVID differently.
Yeah, and I just knew it was something big because I got a fever that wouldn't quit, and it stayed with me for like 2.5 days, and cold compresses. We were kind of out in the middle of nowhere when this happened, and we weren't going to be able to get to an urgent care or anything like that. And at first I didn't even realize that it was that bad, but then when my fever just kind of kept going and I couldn't cut it with anything, I just realized maybe this is more serious than I am thinking. Maybe this isn't going to be my usual. So it was tough. I mean, I'm so thankful for vaccines because I can't even imagine how horrible it would have been if I had not gotten vaccinated. So thankful for that. But yeah, I mean, it definitely, I know a lot of people just say, oh, it's minor, it's not a big deal, and it hits everybody differently. But yeah, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was down, and I was just so thankful that you were all there with me and, could take care of me, and just, we still had a place to stay and we could just rest. And it was just, and of course at this time, I still don't even know what's wrong with me, but I'm just thinking I've got to get strong enough so that we can go to the doctor or go somewhere.
Yeah. And so like, what was that like for you? Like in terms of like the fact that we were on the road? I mean, we weren't at home. We're like, in a strange place.
Yeah. Not ideal. You have all these doubting thoughts that go through your mind. Like, oh my gosh, what if it gets worse? I just remember one of the nights laying there in the bed and just thinking, should I wake everybody up? Should we go somewhere? Should we get to, and then I think, okay, no, it's an hour at least to get to any kind of urgent care. And the reality was later, even when we called in, they wouldn't even see me. And I didn't think it was COVID related, but they wouldn't even see me because it could have been COVID related, which I can understand. But it wouldn't have helped anyway. So it was just a lot of scary thoughts in the middle of the night. Like, oh my gosh, please let this be gone by morning. Please, please, please. Cold compress on my head, just can't get comfortable, all that. And I just the whole time thinking like, okay, this will pass. But wow, this is tough.
Yeah.
Not the ideal adventure.
And so like, while all this is going on, I mean, there's sort of two sides of the story. Like you're like, you're in bed, like we're hydrating you, like trying to get you food, trying to get you rested. Like, but meanwhile, the kids and I are trying to figure out what's going on, what to do. Like, I think we all thought you were just kind of run down. And, so like one of the days we actually went and saw, like we all went to Kings Canyon. And then one of the days we went to, Sequoia while you rested. We just thought we'd give you the space to relax, and we went to Sequoia. I mean, the good thing is in all of this, like we didn't like, we weren't around people at all. We're in the middle of nowhere. So it was like, easy
Yeah.
for us to go do what we did. But we were able to run over to Sequoia. And then it was that next morning that the problem was for us, like, we had to leave. Right. Like, this whole trip this wasn't like a trip where we went to one place and we were like, this was like every couple days we were moving to a new location. And like, this is where it kind of gets messy because, you and I are rule followers.
Yes, we are.
So that next morning we decided we wanted to get you to an urgent care so you could just kind of figure out what's going on. Like you said, they wouldn't even see you, but they did allow us to come in and
Yeah.
swab
So we
you for a
pull
test.
up, and drive an hour or so to get there, pull up to the urgent care, and she comes out swabbing, doesn't even ask any questions, just starts sticking stuff up my nose. And I'm just so weak, just sitting there. And 2 seconds into that, you start asking questions, and we realize, she's about to tell us we have to wait 3 days to find out the results because she just assumed that we wanted insurance to pay for it. And that this was the normal thing, the normal procedure, and they didn't even ask any questions. So we realized very quickly, wow, there's no way. We're in the middle of nowhere. We don't know where we are. We don't know what our plans are going to be. We don't know where we're necessarily sleeping tonight. There's no way I'm waiting 3 days to figure out what's happening. So that was definitely a weird moment for me.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful you were there because I just was not thinking straight and being able to ask the right questions, and you just pumped right up, hey, wait a minute. Back up. Is there another way to do this? And sure enough, she said, well, yeah, if you're willing to pay for it, then we could do the rapid test and we can find out really quickly what's going on here. So she goes back in, comes out with a whole new set, goes back up my nose and starts doing the thing all over again. But the good news now, we knew we were on a path where, okay, we're going to find out within a few hours what's happening.
Yeah.
And, it's just crazy how if you don't ask questions, my God, I can't even imagine.
It was a really good lesson because we were like, we're on the road, we're traveling, and like we're preparing ourselves to like go hunker down somewhere for 3 days just to wait and find out what's going on. And like just by asking a couple of questions, I found that to be a really interesting assumption that was made because like they just assumed we wanted to, like we were only good if like insurance would cover it. But like the cost of the rapid test was, I think it was like $150. And I'm like, I'll pay $150 to find out right now what the heck we're going to do for the next whatever days. Yes. And so, definitely asking, that was a huge lesson for us. Just, always ask questions. If you don't like the answers,
ask questions and have people around you that are strong enough to ask those questions when you are completely beside yourself, weak, tired, and sick.
Yeah. So and I like we all thought you were just run down, and it was kind of a shocker to get that positive.
It was. I thought sure when they called and gave me the result that they were just going to say, okay, well, we ruled out COVID. Now come on in and we're going to do all these other tests to figure out what's going on. And sure enough, that wasn't at all what happened. And then as soon as I realized what was happening, it all started, the domino effect started. And I thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What about the kids? What about Scott? Oh, wow. Like, wait a minute. We're not home. How on earth is all this going to pan out? So that's, I think, when I started to kind of panic a little bit. And really just kind of feel like, wow, I wish I wasn't on the road. Just to be totally honest. Yeah. But, I also knew that you were with me and I was so thankful not to be by myself. And again, I just wasn't really thinking straight. I still felt so bad. And, the good news was she was going to try to get me some stronger medicine than what I had been taking over the counter to help with the pain and all that. And so that was good. And, we started, like 10 minutes at a time here, things just started changing and we started to try to figure these things out. So I was just super thankful that you were there to help with all these decisions.
Yeah,
there were a lot to make.
That point right there was definitely kind of the bottom right there. It was like sort of this, like, everybody wants certainty. And like when you're on the road and something like this happens, like all of a sudden everything is uncertain. You don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And I laugh because like in the beginning part of the trip, we were having such a fantastic time. Oceanfront pools, we're hanging out. We're just like, I mean, just amazing, right? Feeling like you're on top of the world. And then next thing you know, you get this result, you're feeling awful. And you realize now I'm at a super low point. And I mean, I hadn't showered. My hair was like up to here. I had my N95 mask on completely, like my glasses are crooked, right? I remember I had like a long dress on and then a pair of pants. And we stopped to go. You went in to get some medicine for me. And I'm sitting out in front of this store just waiting for you guys to go in. And this is like the ultimate low point. There was a dad and a little like 6-year-old girl walking by me. And I'm just trying to stay away from everybody outside with my mask on, just kind of over to the side. They walk by and then something in her, I don't know what it was. She turns around, walks back to me, and she says, "Excuse me, are you homeless?" I was like, "Oh my God, isn't that bad?" So it's just amazing how all in one adventure you can have super highs and then super lows. And I just had to laugh it off. But at the moment, I didn't feel like laughing.
Yeah, it was definitely the mark of a low point. And it's a good perspective to be able to experience all of those ups and downs for sure. On the other side of that, like the girls and I were all like 100% fine. However, now we are all like, okay, what is about to happen? And so Scott is an analytical. And Scott strategizes, and Scott is a thinker, and okay, it's go time. What are we going to do now? Like, by that point we had found like a little town that did have some civilization in it. And so really the next step was to get Maria comfortable, like find a place where she could isolate, we could isolate, and we could get her comfortable. So got into a hotel. We got 2 rooms. Put you in one so you could just rest. And, we were very close by, but the 3 of us would be in another room, right? Very close. And once you were comfortable, we got you fed, we got you hydrated, got you some medicine so you could rest. We decided to go run out and get some home tests just to see like where we stood. And so, sure enough, one of us comes back positive, 2 of us come back negative. And now it's like, none of us have symptoms. And it's like, oh, now what do we do? So we thought the 3 of us were going to be able to just isolate in a separate room and be okay, but that wasn't the case. And so this is where, for me, like this whole like strategy and analyzing starts to ensue. And the problem with my neurotic brain is like, I like to think about every single possible option. And so I'm thinking all of these different things. Well, we could do this and we can do this and we can do this. And funny enough, the week prior to all of this happening was Mike Gandolfo's podcast, which was episode 42 about his cannonball run with his son, where they drove across the country and back in just a few days. And so this is one of my thoughts. I'm like, we need to stay away from people. I don't know, like we're rule followers. We're probably checking the CDC website I was probably on the CDC website every hour, like looking at the rules again to try to figure out like, what do we need to do to follow the rules, but also be comfortable and safe and, help Maria to get better and be better ourselves. I'm like, well, maybe we just get in the car and we drive back to Charlotte. It's 3,000 miles. I mean, I got on the phone with the rental car company to find out what that would look like, just exploring all options. But what I found was like, I would go through this whole series of thinking, like maybe we could do this, maybe we could do this, and then I'd finally land on something that felt like reasonably good. And then like 2 hours later, something would change. And like some people might call that decision fatigue. It was exhausting. It was so exhausting. And I did go through that that exhausting like decision fatigue for at least 48 hours. And finally got to a point where I was able to just like, and I think like within 48 hours of you getting medicine, you started to feel significantly better.
I
So we
did.
were able to start having conversations, but the fear at that point was, okay, what's going to happen to the rest of us? Like,
Right.
we're probably all going to go down. Are we going to get symptoms? Are we going to stay symptom free? And we're on the road. If we get in the car and we drive across the country, the first 8 hours is through the desert.
Yeah.
And it's
Super
probably going to
cold.
be 100 degrees and there's nothing around. Like, what are we going to do if we find ourselves like not feeling well with, 2 to 3 hours to the next like place to be able to rest? So I don't know. I mean,
Scratch that.
we did. I mean, it was still
That
kind of
was
on
like
the
a good idea
table.
for a little while, and then no, not so much.
Yeah, but I think like for me, where I finally got to after just like honestly just being completely exhausted was two things. Like you and I have taken up meditation practice, and this is something that we've been doing for quite a while, but it's become like we've become more and more practiced at it the last couple of years. And so I did take some time to take some breaths, and I just like I was able to just take some time to like literally let all of it just go for like 15
Mhm.
or 20 minutes, and that was just so like freeing to just like everything, every thought, every worry, all the analysis, all of it, just let it go and just breathe. And like that was such a freeing thing for me. And I think when I got done with that experience, I was able to recognize like we're all safe. We're
Mhm.
here. We're in a comfortable place. We're isolated from people. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to get sick. I don't know if the girls are going to get sick, but right now we're okay.
Yep. And it
And
kept just reminding ourselves of that hour by hour that, okay, we're going to get through this. This is going to pass.
yeah. And so it was like we're not going to make any more decisions beyond today. We'll wake up tomorrow, we'll see how we feel, but today we're going to stay today. And there was there was a gift in all of this. In the place that we were able to find to stay. I'm gonna throw this one back to you because it really was a gift.
Yeah, the way that it worked out, there was a outdoor balcony and it was exterior entrances to the room. So it was great for isolation because you didn't have to go down a long interior hallway or anything. You just stuck to your own spot. And then in the back, it overlooked this beautiful courtyard where there were deer and squirrels and birds, and it was just magical. It was just so healing. You just, we were in an end unit. It just happened to be that way. So we were able to just sit outside by ourselves, away from everyone with our masks and everything else, but we were able to see nature and to be in nature, which was one of our requests to the universe, right? So we did end up getting that, and it was a gift. It really was a gift.
Yeah, it was. And we had the mountains in the background. At that point, we're
Mm-hmm.
about an hour south of Yosemite National Park.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I think like for me, one of the turning point, like I think, um, we talked about your experience in the parking lot, and that like for me, like the turning point, not necessarily the low point, but the turning point was that experience of just letting it all go and then just choosing to just be completely present and just like understanding like until we get through this isolation period, until we get through like whatever symptoms we're going to get and whatever happens to the rest of us, like it's one day at a time and it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. and i
Yep.
and I think the other thing that kind of came out of that for me as a lesson was like honest to goodness, this like just overwhelming feeling of gratitude for like the resources that we had at that point to be able to make the experience comfortable. So it's
Yes.
like this qualifies as an emergency. We're
Mm-hmm.
3,000 miles from home. Like Maria's not feeling well. The rest of us don't know what the heck is going to happen. Like the least we can do is spend a little bit of money, as painful as that might be later, to make this experience as comfortable as we can.
Well, and that's what the emergency fund is for. And when you plan ahead, that is one nice thing that you can do in the moment. And actually qualifying this as an emergency, because it sounds almost silly, but at the same time it really was. It was definitely time to make some changes to our original plans, and we had to do that. We had to do it on the fly, and we had to pay for whatever we were going to do next. So I was also very grateful for that.
Yeah, I can attest that COVID on vacation is expensive. if you do it the right way. But I mean, really, I just felt this like intense gratitude that like that we were able to, like, there was that um, silver lining, if you will, like that we were able to make the experience comfortable, like, be getting 2 rooms so that we could have the space, and like you said, that gift that we got of that just magical little place. So one thing I wanted to talk about was, because like to bring the kids into this, like there was a lot of like worry when we first found out that you had tested positive. It's like, we are rule followers. Like this was our first experience. I know like a lot of people have been through this. We were able to make it 2.5 years, and this was our first experience. And so, we were really, it's kind of a funny, like an ego thing almost. Like I was really proud of the fact that we made it 2.5 years. And, now, we've been through it. It's, we certainly have that badge now as well. But when it first happened, we worked so hard for 2.5 years to keep it out of our family. When it did hit, it was scary. And like, especially for the kids, like not knowing what might come. And this was another lesson. Our family, and especially you and I, are big fans of the Serenity Prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered if you could just share that. Like, I'm sure most people know it, but just kind of refresh us what it is, because it was super helpful.
Yeah. So God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So it's definitely very applicable in this situation. And I feel like with the kids especially, it was just kind of one of those moments where, okay, guys, things are going sideways and it's okay. Like we've got to figure out in this whole thing what we can control and let go of what we can't control. And I'm a huge control freak. So for me, that's tough. And just to say, okay, I know the difference between the two, and I'm willing to let go of what I can't control. And that was I could eat fruit and I could eat vegetables and I could, really treat my body well, but it was going to be in God's time that I was going to get better. And I just had to accept that. And then, we had to also accept whatever was going to come with the rest of the family. And eventually everybody did test positive. So it definitely made its way through the whole family, which over time, it's tough, and you don't know how everybody's going to react. We're all different. And, I think that it helped. I think it helped to calm them down. It helped to calm us down. And it really made us slow down so that we could take our time figuring out what the next right step is for us as a family. And I really think another lesson learned for the kids especially is a way to role model being flexible and reshaping our expectations, and that when you're on the road, you can figure things out, and that you have these grand plans and they don't always go the way that you want them to, and it's okay. It's still okay. We're still allowed to have fun. We can still laugh. We can still, as much as we can, try to just enjoy the experience, even though it's challenging. But, there just turned out to be a lot of, like, thankfully we had brought the Fire Stick with us. So we watched a lot of movies and a lot of time together. Once we realized, okay, we're all positive, like, we were wearing masks around each other and everything else. And, I just remember times where we would watch movies together, and then it became eventually some family time again together. So
we literally, like, trying not to test positive, we literally slept in our N95 masks when you were in the other room. But that was I want to come back to the Serenity Prayer real quick, because when you were in the other room, like initially that first day when I went and got the home tests. So we bought the home tests, and before we took them, the kids and I all said the Serenity Prayer, because I wanted to prepare them. Like if any of us test positive, we don't know how it's going to happen. Like, it's going to be okay, guys. It's going to be okay. So each one of us said the Serenity Prayer out loud. And I just love is, like, the things that you can't change, right? We want to accept those things. The things that you can change, this is like, this is where Scott's like decision fatigue comes in, because I'm like, I want to look at every single option to try to figure out how we can control or change this situation. But for me personally, the piece of the Serenity Prayer that I love the most is the wisdom to know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggle with that one because I tend to like, this is where my overanalysis comes in. But, at some point, like for me, the wisdom to know the difference came in letting it all go. And it just kind
Yeah.
of comes back to that
The
last piece.
surrender. I mean, it's really just surrender and understanding that you don't have control of the situation, that you can figure out where you're going to stay, but the rest of it's just going to happen in its own time, and that's it. And you really just need to accept it. And there's not much else that you can change in that situation. So
No, and that comes back to like the fact that you and I both are rule followers.
yes.
And that made this even harder because, like I said, we were like constantly on the CDC website, like, what can we do? What can we do? And I think one of the lessons that came out of this was like, I feel so good. We did our absolute best in that situation. But the thing is, like, there's no perfect solution.
No.
It's
There's
messy.
really not.
And there is no perfect solution.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just getting through it and coming out the other side and realizing that it's okay. That you can't expect yourself to do everything perfectly, and we're going to do our absolute best here, but given the situation that we're in, there really, like you said, there really is no perfect solution. There's not.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we made it through. And I think one of the last things that I wanted to cover that was like a really big one for me was around the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we create in our in our minds when something like this goes wrong. Because there was a story that I created in my own mind, and I literally started creating this narrative. So in 2020, we planned to go to Yosemite National Park. This was a very big deal. I really wanted to go see this park. It's something I've been dreaming about for a long time. And in 2020, COVID-19 said, no, you're not going. COVID-19 shut down everything, including Yosemite National Park in that summer. So we had to cancel our plans. We worked really hard. We talked about that at the beginning of the podcast. Didn't go. Okay, so that goes back on our list. Like, we will get back to Yosemite. And 2022 was going to be our trip, right? So we go through this whole experience. Everything's going great. LA, people doing all this stuff, drive up to Kings Canyon. You start feeling well. We are literally an hour from Yosemite National Park. And the thoughts going through my mind, like, COVID-19 is keeping us from going to Yosemite National Park again. And these stories that you tell ourselves, like, the story I told myself was, it's not meant to be. We're not meant to go to Yosemite. Third time's a charm. Maybe we need to plan another trip. Like, maybe this is the story. Maybe the story is we struck out twice, and the third time we went, we had this amazing, beautiful experience at Yosemite National Park. And so that was a story that I created in my own mind. And I start creating this narrative like, hey, yeah, this will make a great podcast episode 2 years from now. When we go to Yosemite, we can talk about all of this. I don't know. I'm curious, like, the stories that you were thinking around that same.
Yeah, it's funny. There was a day, I remember when we started talking about this, and there was a day that I think we were both locked into that story, and we were very convinced of that. Like okay, that's it. COVID, it won again, right? We're just going to let this go. And at that point, though, I was feeling a whole lot better. I had passed my time period, and you all were feeling better. And I mean, you never even felt bad, but it was just one of those things where we were kind of like scratching our heads going, okay, we're an hour from Yosemite. What if we were to drive through Yosemite, but not get out, not be near people, right? And just see it. Could we do that? Is that even possible? And so we just started asking each other these questions. Like, do we really need to let COVID win? And we had to, it's just funny how your brain works, because we had to really work our way through that. And I feel like there was a 24-hour period there where we were kind of asking each other these questions. Like, I don't know. I don't know. And then I'll let you take it from there.
Well, I mean, so we were taking it one day at a time and like, having these loose conversations, but knowing like today's not the day. And
Yes.
then I remember one morning we woke up, you were well through your isolation. Like we're most of the way through ours. And we're like, no, we're feeling okay at this point. We're like, we could do any story that we want, but we're an hour south of Yosemite National Park. And I want to see El Capitan and I want to see Half Dome. And we were supposed to be there for 4 days, hiking it and experiencing it and being it and living it. And you know what? Like, I still want to do that. But in this story, we decided to mask up, get in the car, stay in the car, and spend 2 hours driving through a park that's meant to be seen over a week. But at least we got to see El Capitan and Half Dome and get back in time for lunch.
Yeah.
At our little mountain retreat overlooking the deer in isolation. And so our story does end with seeing the places, all of the places that we wanted to see. Didn't get to see them the way that we wanted to see them, but we did do it safely. And I do kind of wonder if the going to see Yosemite the way that we saw it takes a little bit away from what it could have been had we gone back, because like now, truthfully, I've been there and I don't feel the desire to go back immediately. I definitely want to go back, but I don't feel like I need to go back with an urgency that I probably would have had we not gone. But again, there's no perfect solution. This is the story that we chose. And then the last thing that I want to finish with was, during this experience, the Wurtzbacher family are adventurers. And during this experience, we talked to friends and family and people, like, we sought advice, like, what should we do and all that. But one of the things that like kept coming up in conversations with people was like, oh, I'm so sorry. This is so awful. I'm so sorry you're going through this, how horrible this is. And at the time, like, I totally get it, empathizing with us, and I completely understand. But I also was like, actually, it's not that bad. Like,
we have a lot to be thankful for.
We're in a comfortable place. Like, we're making it an adventure. Like, this is okay. But like, other people telling us how bad it was making us question, like, oh, maybe it's worse than, maybe we're not really thinking through this. But again, I think that comes back to sort of the stories that you tell yourself and the way that you look at it. So, super fun conversation. Just a couple of things to just wrap up. I mean, like, do you have any sort of, like, now that we're through it, everybody, we're home, everybody's negative, we're all feeling better, like we're back to normal here. And I just, like, how did this trip change you? And, what are your lessons learned going forward?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I definitely am a changed person from this trip in my expectations, right? So no longer will I plan trips and think to myself, like, okay, this day we're doing this, and then that day we're doing that, and so structured as I usually am. I think I'll learn to have more flexibility and actually maybe plan less of the trip, but just leave it open-ended. Not that I'm inviting COVID back into our lives, but I think there was something kind of instructive about saying, okay, we're going to reshape our expectations here. We're going to just do something on the fly, completely spontaneous, and it's all going to work out. It's going to be okay. So I feel like, that it gives you a chance that when life throws you a curveball, that you realize we do know how to figure this out. We are resourceful. We can figure out, we have the money to be able to do it. And we planned, all of that so that when stuff happens, we'll be okay. And on top of that, I feel like it gave me the confidence to believe that the growth really happens when you're faced with a challenge. Yeah. And it sounds kind of cliche, but the challenge is in the solution, as we've often been told. And facing that challenge made me realize that I can do a lot more and I can still have a great time, and it's all going to work out. So I think it's going to relieve some of those fears that I have about being an over planner and always wanting everything to be just a certain way.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. So, do you think that our kids are ever going to go on a 3 or 4 week vacation with us.
Not for a while. As soon as we got home, they just beelined to their rooms and closed the door. And I think it was like several hours before we saw them again. So, yeah, I mean, I will admit we were all very happy. I don't think I've ever been so happy to get home from a vacation before in my life. But I think that memories grow fonder as time goes on. And I think we have a good chance of getting them back out there.
They were awesome. They were so good on this trip. I mean, they worked through the uncertainty and the fear, and like we totally got through it together. They were awesome. Yep. So they get huge points for that.
Yep.
So as we wrap up, all right. So let's say we've got people listening that want to go take an adventure. And they might be experiencing resistance, some of which might be, well, I can't do that. What if something goes wrong? What advice would you have for people that are worried about taking a trip because of what might happen while they're gone?
Yeah, no, that's very likely a possibility. That it's that bubble that we had surrounding us in Minnesota was just a fluke, I think. And this was a great example of a more realistic adventure where you're going to have highs and you're going to have lows, and it's all part of the adventure. So I would just say embrace it and expect it and plan for it. Yeah. So, because we were planned for it, because we had the emergency fund, that really helped us a lot to be able to bounce back and figure out what to do next. So plan ahead, be flexible, and know it's okay. If something goes wrong, it's all going to be okay.
Yeah, I might add, I think the bubble was still there. I think you use the word instructive. I think the bubble was there. We got some instruction, and we came back, and we're stronger now.
It could have been a lot worse, for sure.
Yeah. So Maria, you were on episode 17 where we talked about the Minnesota trip, and our friend David Wells facilitated that conversation. And we talked about the actor and actress that would play us when they make the movie about our lives. And in our movie about that Minnesota trip, Reese Witherspoon plays you.
Yep.
And Ty Burrell from Modern Family plays me.
Yep.
So if they do a sequel about this California COVID trip, are we keeping the same actor, actresses, or are we going to switch things up?
I thought about this quite a bit, and I got to stay with Reese. I think she's a very good comeback kind of girl. And when things just, I can think of many different roles that she's played where things just are always sideways, and she just bounces right back. So yeah, I think this is a good fit.
I love it. Well, if we're sticking with the same actor, actress, I think I'll do the same. We'll give our movie watchers continuity when that happens. So we'll stick with Ty Burrell. But I really appreciate you spending the time. This is fun. When we turn off the cameras, I'll walk into the other room and high five you and give you a kiss. But for those listening, I hope that you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope our story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, and remind you that even when things go wrong, you can still find meaning in the experience. We want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or you need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. And we'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. Until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thank you for listening. Maria, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.